When we're thinking about the doctrine of election, predestination, thinking about Calvinism, one of the things that you've got to come down to in a question, really in thinking about any doctrine, is so what? You hear a doctrine, you hear Christian dogma, and I think the question we all have to say is, yeah, but so what? What does that matter? So when it comes to this issue of election, what we're saying is, it seems like all of this does when we talk about it, whether it's with friends or family members or neighbors or coworkers, is it divides. And so why should we play this up so much, or why should we really emphasize it and hold it as precious if all it does is divide? Shouldn't we just downplay it, maybe be quiet, closet Calvinists? Why should we make a big deal of that and really come forward with it, a strong conviction? And there's really a few answers to that question. It's a great question. And it comes down to really thinking through, at some point in your Christian life, at some point in your own understanding of what it means to be a Christian, you've got to come to the bottom of, what happened to me? Like, I was going this way in my life. My life was on this trajectory. And then somewhere in the middle of all that, I heard the gospel of Jesus Christ, crucified, raised from the dead, and I didn't understand all of it. But all I know is that everything in me wanted to say yes to it and submit to it. And now my life is here as a Christian, as a disciple, as one who is submitted to the authority of God in all things and being shaped increasingly by an affection for Jesus. So you've got to come down to, so what happened to you? Like, that change doesn't just happen to everybody, and to those it happens to, why did it happen? How did it happen? According to scriptures, it's obviously not because you're so moral, or because you're a spiritual person, or because you're a religious person. Life before Christ proved that's the opposite of what's true, right? You weren't a God-loving person. You were in many ways a God-rejecting, God-hating person, even according to scriptures. So what happened to you? This is why the doctrine is so important, is it begins to explain what happened to you. God has elected you. God has predestined for you to be His, an adopted son, an adopted daughter in His family. God has, as it were, said, I want you to be mine, and He made you His. That's why this is so significant. It helps explain why I'm a Christian, and then also, when you think about the doctrine of election, predestination, it's not a matter of God picking teams, who's in, who's out, all the good players to the left, all the bad players to the right, or I think on the camera you probably have my hands a little bit different, but it's not a matter of God picking teams. What it's a matter of is explaining how it is that you got there, how it is that you've gotten where you are. So you think about the book of Ephesus, the church at Ephesus. What's going on there when Paul begins that letter, and he starts talking about the fact that God has chosen you before the foundation of the world, and He's predestined you to be adopted as His son according to the riches of His glorious grace. Think about who He's writing to. He's writing to a church that is divided, that is confused, that is in some ways hating one another, because you've got Jews on one side, Gentiles on the other. The Jews keep saying the Gentiles don't have as much standing as they do. The Gentiles keep saying, hey, Jews, settle down a little bit. We're in this thing too, and get off your high horse. And then there's the other Gentiles who are going, maybe the Jews are right. Maybe I don't have much standing in all of this. Maybe I am an outcast. Maybe I am an outsider. And so what Paul is writing to say to this divided church, this church that has some quarrels among them, is to say, no, listen to both of you. This is how you got here. Before the foundations of the world, God predestined you to be adopted. All of you, both of you, all kinds of you, God has chosen for you to be here. So the reason we hold this as precious is because it helps us understand God's affection for us. It helps us understand God's love for us, and the fact that it's not because of anything good we've done. It's not because of any righteousness that we've proven to God. It's not because of anything we've established before Him to make Him want to say, oh yeah, I finally want that person. They've done enough. And here's why that's so important. Because there's going to come a day when you're going to do something against God and a sin, something you said you would never do. You're gonna fall into sin in ways, fall into temptation in ways that you thought you never would. You're going to fall back into a sin that you thought long ago you had defeated. And then you're in that day going to wonder, I wonder if God still loves me. I wonder if God's still in on me. I wonder if I can ever get back to where I once was. I've fallen so far. And the way you're going to answer that question, one of the ways you're going to think about answering that question is through the doctrine of election. You didn't get where you were in the first place on your own. So there's no way you can actually fall from that place on your own. God is the one who's brought you here. God is the one who will always restore and redeem, and God is the one who's going to keep you here because He, before the foundations of the world, wanted you to be His, right? And so I think when you come around the divisions that this causes and the way that some people are going to be on the other side of the fence and to go, no, that makes it sound like we're robots, or no, that doesn't make it sound like love is very genuine. I think what you have to understand is there are Bible-believing, God-loving, Christ-exalting Christians on both sides of this argument. There really are. And so I think what you do is you understand that you need to have convictions. What do you believe the Bible teaches? So don't just take our word for it at the Austin Stone. Sure, we're your church leaders, and sure, we have convictions about this, and we're going to believe and teach in the way of God's electing purposes. But we want you to hold those convictions honestly with us. And do you hold those convictions honestly? At some point, you've got to come down to, what do you believe the Bible teaches? What do you believe is coming forward? What happened to you? What do you believe the Bible's telling you what happened to you? What do you believe about how God is saving His people, right? When you come to that place, you understand there's people on both sides, but you also understand, I'm going to hold my convictions tight. Yes, there's people on both sides, but where the Bible has spoken clearly, I'm going to hold that deeply. Where the Bible has spoken firmly, I'm going to hold that kind of position with every bit of conviction that God would give me by His Spirit. But I'm also going to have charity with that. So I'm not going to be an angry Calvinist that's out to shoot down every Arminian or non-Calvinist out there, right? In the same way that there are Arminians and non-Calvinists who want to shoot down all the Calvinists. And you go, listen, I'm not out for shooting anybody, but I am for believing what the Bible teaches about the way that God has saved me. And what we believe is that when we think about God's election and predestination, this is the kind of position we hold precious because we believe this teaching comes from the Bible and it gives the most glory to God for our salvation. That's why we proclaim it. That's why we glory in it. That's why we marvel at it. Because we go, we weren't worth it. We were destitute and destined for hell, right? But God saved us according to His own mercy, according to His own grace, according to His own purposes. And man, I get to be a part of that. And that helps me understand my darkest of days, and that helps me level in my best of days, understanding that all of it comes together by His glorious grace. And so why play this doctrine up if it just divides? Well, because it teaches us about God's purposes, God's character, and teaches us about our place with Him. And for the division, let's be not people who would divide. Let's be people who would come together, even with those on the other side, and agree where we can, and agree to disagree, and honor their own convictions. And we don't have to persuade or convert anybody to Calvinism. We're just seeking to be increasingly honest disciples for the glory of Jesus Christ, to His glorious grace.